In this video, what we are going to discuss is anticipation, prolongation, and abandonment of the duties and powers of public office. Still, we are in the crimes committed by public officers. So what are the specific provisions? We start with Article 236, that is the anticipation of duties of a public office. Article 237, the prolonging the performance of the duties and power. And last is Article 238, that is your abandonment of office or position. So what are the elements of Article 236? Again, your Article 236 is anticipation of duties of a public office. First, your offender here is entitled to hold a public office or employment. The reason why he is entitled to hold such office is because he is either elected or appointed, either by election or appointment. Number two, the law requires that said appointed officer or said elected officer should first be sworn in and or should first give a band. Number three, he assumes the performance of the duties and powers of such office, but he has not taken his oath of office and or given the band required by law. In other words, nagmamadali si offender. So let's read this bar exam question 2012. This is a MCQ. Akala mo yung articles 236 to 238 hindi tinatanong sa bar exams. Pero tinanong ito nung nagkaroon ng MCQ. So what crime is committed when a person assumes the performance of duties and powers of a public office or employment without first being sworn in? Choices are letter A, anticipation of the duties of a public office. Letter B, usurpation of authority. Letter C, prohibited transaction. And letter D is unlawful appointment. So the answer is letter A, anticipation of duties of a public office. Let's go to Article 237, prolonging performance of duties and powers. What are the elements? Number one, your offender is holding a public office. Number two, the period provided by law, regulations, or special provisions for holding such office has already expired. And number three, that offender continues to exercise the duties and powers of such office. Kung kanina sa Article 236, yung ating offender is nagmamadali, dito naman sa Article 237, ang ating offender is kumakapit. Bakit kumakapit kaya sa office? Because the office might be a immigration, customs, BIR, maraming pera dyan, kaya talagang kakapitan mo yan. 2012 MCQ, AA here was appointed for a 2-year term to serve the unexpired portion of a resigned public official. So despite being disqualified after the lapse of the 2-year term, AA continued to exercise the duties and powers of the public office to which he is appointed. So what is the criminal liability of AA? The choices are AA is criminally liable for malfeasance in office. Letter B, AA is criminally liable for prolonging performance of duties and powers. Letter C, AA is criminally liable for disobeying request for disqualification. And last choice is AA incurs no criminal liability because there is no indication that he caused prejudice to anyone. The answer here is letter B. That is your Article 237. Let's go to Article 238. That is your abandonment of office or position. What are the elements? Number one, your offender is a public officer. Number two, that public officer formally resigns from his position. Number three, his resignation has not yet been accepted and he abandons his office to the detriment of the public service. So let's read ang jurisprudence para maintindihan nyo bakit nga ba may Article 238. Ano ang sinasabi ng Supreme Court? To constitute a complete and operative resignation from public office, ano ang mga kailangan? First, there must be this intention to relinquish a part of the term. Second, there must be an act of relinquishment. And last, which is the most important, there must be an acceptance by the proper authority. Resignation or acceptance is necessary for resignation of a public officer for that resignation to be operative and effective. Without acceptance, resignation is nothing and the officer remains in office. A public officer, he cannot abandon his office before his resignation is accepted. Otherwise, that public officer is subject to the penal provisions of Article 238 of the RPC. So, please take note ha. Pero itong acceptance by the proper authority, we are only talking about your employment in the government. Hindi ito yung pinag-uusapin natin is yung employment mo sa private sector. Bar exam question, what crime is committed by a public officer who, before the acceptance of his resignation, he abandons his office to the detriment of the public service in order for the public officer to evade the discharge of the duties of preventing, prosecuting, or punishing the crime of treason? What are the choices? Letter A, abandonment of office or possession. Letter B, qualified abandonment of office. Letter C, misprision of treason. Letter D, negligence in the prosecution of offense. The answer here is letter B, qualified abandonment of office. So when is the offense qualified? Maaring magtataka kayo bakit ang naging sagot natin is qualified abandonment of office or possession. Because if the purpose in the abandonment of the office is to evade the discharge of the duties of preventing, prosecuting, or punishing a crime, then it is a qualified Article 138. But take note na hindi basta-bastang mga crimes. Dapat yung crime must fall within Title 1. Title 1 ng Book 2 ng RPC. Ano ba yung Title 1? That is your crimes against national security and the law of nations. Dun sa sinabi natin or dun sa nabasa nating bar exams, what was involved there is treason. So therefore, it is included. Another is your Title 3, Chapter 1. Ano yung Title 3, Chapter 1? That is your crimes against public order. That is your rebellion, sedition, and disloyalty. So, kung ito yung mga crimes involved, the public officer does not want to discharge his duties concerning these crimes enumerated, then the crime committed is qualified abandonment of office. Ano ang basis natin? That is your Article 238, Paragraph 2. So please take note of Article 238, Paragraph 2. Let's relate our discussion to Article 208, that is your prosecution of offenses. Bakit tayo bumalik sa Article 208? Inasa Article 238 na tayo. There are two ways of committing Article 208, but take note of number 1. What is number 1? By maliciously refraining from instituting prosecution against violators of the law. Diba parang parehas lang yan dun sa qualified abandonment of office. Let's take a look at their elements. So the offender here is also a public officer, and that public officer, despite knowing the commission of the crime, he does not cause the prosecution of the criminal, and the offender acts with malice and deliberate intent. But take note that si Article 208 and Article 238 are again magkaiba. So saan nagkakaiba si Article 238 from Article 208? In Article 238, sino ang offender? You take note of who is your offender. Your offender is any public officer. How about in Article 208? Who is your offender? Your offender also is a public officer. But that public officer has that duty to institute prosecution for the punishment of violations of the law. Meaning to say yung public officer or your offender in Article 208 is very specific. He has that duty, and his duty is to institute prosecution. Pwede dito si fiscal, pwede dito si police officer, pwede dito si barangay chairman. What else? In Article 238, The public officer abandons his office. Why is he abandoning his office? The reason is he wants to evade the discharge of his duty. How about in Article 208? Meron din bang abandonment of office? Answer, no. The public officer does not abandon his office. Ano lang ang ginawa ni public officer? He fails to prosecute an offense that is either by dereliction of duty or by malicious tolerance of the commission of the offense.